Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Talking Indies in My Undies. My name is Jacob and I'll be your host. So FilmFest Knox went down a handful of weeks ago. And as part of that film festival, there was the film competition, The Elevator Pitch, which is now in its second year. And of course, I could not miss that. There were over 20 short films that were just amazing that were created for The Elevator Pitch. And as many of you know, the top 8 films are selected in order to have a live pitch session in front of a full audience in a movie theater. It's a really cool spectacle to see, and this year did not disappoint. Now, I've been to dozens of these film festivals and film competitions. I have seen literally hundreds of local short films, and I just keep getting the feeling that the game keeps getting upped further and further in regards to the effort and creativity displayed by all the different teams. There were so many of the films that I truly enjoyed this year, and it made me feel very proud to be a part of the film community in this region. Today, I really wanted to talk about one of the films that I saw that was so unique and different in comparison to all of the short films that I feel like I've seen over the years. And when I say all the short films, not all of them, but this was a rarity, something that you don't see very often in these types of film competitions. That's because it was a romantic comedy. I'm a huge fan of romantic comedies. For whatever reason, romantic comedy is not usually a genre that you see on a local level. But beyond it being an outlier because of its genre, it was actually a really nice, charming, sweet movie. And that is really the most important part. So when I discovered who the team leader of this group was, a woman named Amelia Bartlett, I just knew I had to speak with her. Amelia is the executive producer of AB Studios here in Knoxville, Tennessee, and she has an amazing story about this short film and all of the projects that she's been working on over the past couple years. Amelia approaches filmmaking from a business perspective, which I think is so important and often overlooked by a lot of my peers. There's a lot of cool stuff to learn from Amelia in this podcast. So let's just get down to it. This is Amelia Bartlett on this episode of Talking Indies in My Undies.
Amelia Bartlett. I run AB Studios here in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we make indie genre films with hearts and smarts. AB Studios, contrary to the fact that my name is Amelia Bartlett and it's AB, it is A/B because I wanted to create a brand that represented constant fluidity and trying new things and the wisdom to compare to your past work and say, what have I learned from this?
Yes.
I aspire to that wisdom of having retrospect and being able to learn from it. But I created AB Studios because I wanted to have an overarching umbrella for the work I'm driven to create. So not just my own work, but there are other filmmakers in my network, writers and directors especially, whose work I think is phenomenal, but who have little interest, rightfully so, in the business of producing. And as someone with a career in entrepreneurship and, just building businesses for the majority of my adult life, I see that as my contribution to my artistic community is I can be like, yeah, guys, I can do some money stuff. I can do some legal stuff. Like I can put together structures and help build like architecture around film ideas so that creatives can come in and do their best work. So I created AB Studios. I want to make movies, as I said, with hearts and smarts. So I connect with filmmakers who bring, romantic comedies, who bring magical realism, who bring intentional sci-fi. Even, there are thrillers that also have hearts and smarts, rooted in folklore, rooted in culture, rooted in like somebody's lineage. The kinds of things that connect us as people are really what I'm interested in exploring in film, both as a writer and director and as a producer and executive producer.
FilmFest Knox this past year, you made a short film. Let's talk about that. Was that your first short film that you'd ever produced?
No. The short film that my team brought to FilmFest Knox is called How to Get the Girl. It was written and directed by Stephanie Hong and produced by my company, AB Studios. So we went into Film Fest Knox with the intent to actually submit my first film, which I made earlier this year, which was a proof of concept called Lavender Fields Forever. We were going to submit that into the Proof of Concept Festival because at the time of publishing, there was nothing in the rules about it being a timed competition. I knew that it had been timed last year, but I read through everything and I was like, okay, looks like there's nothing here. And I reached out to Kurt and Kurt was like, let me look at that. Let me look at the wording.
Yeah.
And then it was made clear to me that it was a timed competition. And I was like, okay, so now I got to make another film. And Stephanie had a feature film that was already, like, her feature script was already finished. And so the team got together and we helped her develop the short script and ultimately went through the process of producing and kind of bringing this whole vision together that includes the city of Sweetwater, which is the setting of our romantic comedy.
I loved it. And it was such a breath of fresh air for me personally. I've been to these film competitions, these film festivals for 10, 15 years. So I have seen literally hundreds of short films. Seeing a romantic comedy was so wonderful to see. I love romantic comedies and it was charming and funny. I loved it. I think that there's sort of a seriousness to a lot of filmmakers. You know, they want to make their honest, dark work. You know, they want to see my inner soul. It has a lot of heart. And it really shined through on screen. So let's talk about that film a little bit. So you mentioned Sweetwater.
Thank you. Yes. This film, in terms of heart, is really about friendship and about love in various forms. Love for the people, love for the place, and I think love for the rhythm of living in a smaller town and what that means for these characters. So we opted to do a romantic comedy because that not only felt like a differentiating factor. I remember going to Kurt at the beginning of this and being like, Kurt, could a rom-com win this? And he was like, we would love to see new genres come in. Yeah. We don't get a lot of that in Knoxville from what I've seen just in my, last few years in the film community. But what we wanted to do was create a film that reflected the movies that we like and the movies that we want to make. Because I think, I'm a 90s child, so I'm inspired by, the rom-coms of the era, the Under the Tuscan Sun, Serendipity. Yes, so good. Okay, what's your favorite rom-com?
You just mentioned Under the Tuscan Sun. I only saw it maybe in the past 6 months. I love Diane Lane. It is so charming. It's probably my favorite movie that I've seen in 2024.
It's literally about a woman who falls in love with a house. I love that so much. Who falls in love with a town, who falls in love with a culture, who falls in love with herself, who falls in love with her faith, which is complicated. And it also has such feminist messaging. That was big. To have, chosen family, to have a non-heteronormative couple, to have friends who come together in the end to raise a baby. That's kind of radical in themes for that time. So I think that when we set out to make a rom-com, we were truly setting out to make a proof of concept for a feature. We really want to see a feature film be made in Sweetwater. So can I tell you about how Sweetwater kind of comes into all this?
I would love to know, please.
So when we started the How to Get the Girl vision, the story is rooted in a small town. One of the focuses of the film is we can't split this town in half if we break up kind of thing. Yes. So you have these two best friends who are, practically in relationship, but they don't have the romantic element to it. And so when this third character comes in and sort of puts that to the test, they're realizing that they've been avoiding their feelings for each other because they're afraid of losing this really special environment that they've cultivated around themselves with their family and their friends and their community and these local businesses that make up Main Street. And that's the core of the story. That's the core of the feature film that Stephanie wrote, and it's the core of the short film. And so what we were thinking was, how are we going to pay for this? Because we'd already made a movie this year. AB Studios produced Lavender Fields. We crowdfunded for it. We hired an entire crew for it. We did the entire shebang. And we were like, we can't go back to the same sources for funding. And none of us are independently wealthy. So what are we going to do? So pulling inspiration from another project under the AB Studios moniker, I have a TV show called Outdoorsy.
Okay.
And it is it's we're in development, we're fundraising for it, we're looking for partners who are interested in, seeing that vision come to light. But what it's mostly about is going into America's outdoor play spaces and the communities that support them. So it has this tourism travel element where we work with local businesses, and rather than charging local businesses to be on the show, we work with tourism boards to feature their town and to help us choose kind of the representative community of organizations, whether it's nonprofits, businesses, or, individuals that can showcase that town. So borrowing from that model, we were like, how can we make this romantic comedy a commercial for a small town?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's a cool idea, yeah.
So I don't know if anybody saw this fairly mid rom-com on Netflix called Find Me Falling with Harry Connick Jr. But I was watching that movie and I'm like, this is a 90-minute tourism ad for the country of Cyprus. They even do like the little food montage of and this is Cyprus food. Yeah. And these are our Cyprus historical buildings. It very much is like, if you've never heard of Cyprus, look how pretty it is. You should come here. And that was really inspiring as we were looking at the story we had and How to Get the Girl to be like, is there a town around this region that not only we could make a short film in, but that we could show it at film festivals and we can leverage it as a tourism asset for them? Wow,
yeah. Giving it this sort of twist and a little spin on it really benefits that town. That is an amazing idea.
Thank you. And Sweetwater was beyond supportive of this. I'll get into bragging on them, but I worked in rural outreach last year with the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. That's my other career, is I work with entrepreneurs. I teach, business acumen, and I work with, people who want to start businesses. And I really developed this true affinity for small community entrepreneurship, because small communities often are still completely full of small businesses. They have their local general store. They have the local ice cream parlor. They have small businesses because big chains are like, there's no big dollars there yet. So they haven't moved in and completely colonized all the culture. So I really fell in love with the idea of how can I bring more to these smaller towns? Like, what do they need? What's useful? And one of those things that was constantly a part of the conversation was tourism. You have to have tourism because it's not just your locals that are patronizing your small businesses. It's the people who are coming in to see what you're all about. It's the people who, stop off the highway for a bite to eat on their way to somewhere bigger. And ideally they stop and they say, actually, I can walk around. I can go to a boutique. I could, get a gift for someone I'm on the way for. And so I had some tourism contacts left over from that rural outreach work and was like, I'm going to call the one person who I think will be honest with me about this idea. Tell me if it's crazy. So I called the head of tourism in Sweetwater and I was like, hey, can I just run this idea by you? Tell me what you think. And I told her, I said, I want to make a short film that acts as a tourism asset for a small town. I want to tour it at film festivals and I want to uniquely drive traffic back to the town based on just, this is a cinematic location. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side of that, I want for that short film to establish a creative vision that a feature film can be made in this town. And this person was like, our biggest goal in the tourism office is to have a Hallmark movie made here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was like, what serendipity, right? That this is something they've already talked about, that they're already interested in, but they had no clear pathway to get to. Like, you don't Google like how to get a Hallmark movie made in my town.
Right.
I think one of the ones that's really well known right now is A Biltmore Christmas, mm-hmm. which was filmed at Biltmore. And I was just reading about it because it's the kind of thing where when a movie gets 90% on Rotten Tomatoes and you find out it's on Hallmark, your brain just sort of short circuits a little bit. And you're like, how did that happen? Not to throw shade at Hallmark movies, but usually Hallmark movies don't attract the Rotten Tomatoes cinema crowd.
Sure,
These are people.
That makes sense.
People who actually vote on these things.
Right.
So it's like, wow, that's amazing. And it turns out that the film was made because somebody pretty high up in the Biltmore organization had interned with the now CEO of Hallmark and was like, hey, I think it's a good idea. You guys should make a movie here. that massive connection between somebody at the tip top of the largest private residence in America and the tip top of Hallmark had to come together to make a movie in this town. And that feels rather inaccessible for our small communities.
Yes, yes.
Like if you don't have a massive destination like Biltmore, what do you have to offer, right? And I can tell you Sweetwater has a ton to offer. They have a beautiful historic Main Street. They have multiple really cute businesses. We shot at 7 locations in a 7-minute short film, which is insane.
Yes,
I cannot recommend it. But all of these locations were offered to us without cost. We had all of the business owners on site with us, helping us with the space. For instance, we shot at a restaurant called The Lazy Beagle, and the owner, Sam Mosier, who is just an absolute gem, a wonderful supporter of the project and of AV Studios. He came down 4 or 5 times while we were filming to help us, turn off the music that had just magically started itself, or to figure out how to turn off a refrigerator. Because we're shooting in live environments, even though thankfully the businesses are closed for the day. Like the fryer was on that morning in order to make us a burger. So we had prop food. We just had so much support from everyone in the town. And that was just during filming. But in order to get to filming, the community really came together, fell in love with the vision, and invested in it.
That is so cool. Tomorrow, I'm taking my wife on a day date. And we are going to Sweetwater.
Yes.
And so there's this place that's called, the Cup Runneth Over, I believe.
We shot there.
That is part of the reason I'm going, because I remember seeing it in your film.
Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, Kendra, who owns the Cup, was so helpful. She was helpful getting food out in the cabinet. She was helpful getting our prop cups set up, we had to move all the furniture and just absolutely make a movie set of her space. And she was so incredibly supportive. She's part of the Sweetwater community, truly see how much goodness and charm and specialness there is in that city and how much they want to share it with people. Like that, I think, was one of the biggest things was that, I'm not from Tennessee. I don't have an accent. I have a Florida accent, but I don't have that I was born here sort of immediate kinship when I move into a community, especially a community that might be considered more rural than where we are in Knoxville. And Sweetwater welcomed me and my crew, which had people from Tennessee, people from Kentucky, people from Georgia, and people from Florida. Just welcomed all of us in, made us feel right at home, and made us feel like we were already a part of the Sweetwater community, which I think set the tone for such a fun and well-run set. Yeah. We had so much fun working on the film. We had so much fun being in the locations, drinking milkshakes at the creamery and getting coffee from the Cup. It was one of my favorite movie experiences. That is amazing. So you mentioned the cast and crew. I have to say there's a lot of the actors in the film that I had never seen before. So where did you find these terrific actors? And tell us about your crew as well. Well, I'll just throw out there that one of those actors is sitting in this room. It was me. When we came together to start AV Studios, I myself am an actor. My producer, Kate, is an actor. And Stephanie, who is the writer and director of the film, is also a professional full-time actor. So for Stephanie and I to step into these roles, that made sense. Stephanie's partner, John, who is also our editor, is just getting started in his acting career. And so he came in and, he got to work with Stephanie a lot. So they got to work on that comedic timing between the two characters of Riley and Mason, who play kind of best friends in there. Our friend Callie Bacon, who is, I think she's been voted best actress by Blank Newspaper multiple times. She's a phenomenal professional, and we brought her in to play Ellie. And then we actually did a casting call for our romantic lead, Patrick, because one of the core elements of the film is Stephanie as an Asian American, and she wanted to put an Asian American in a leading man role. We don't see a lot of Asian leading men when it comes to romantic comedies. Her character, Riley, and his character, Patrick, are siblings. It really made sense to bring that into the fold. So we did a sort of Eastern Seaboard casting search on Breakdown, the casting breakdowns, Actors Access. And I think we had, maybe 150 submissions. And it's really funny being inside of casting, because I do believe that Stephanie is moving into professional casting. She's really good at it. I was part of the casting process, and it's so interesting to see like the very wide range, people who are not the age or not the aesthetic, who are like, I could be though.
just
never
hurts
funny.
to try.
It never hurts to try. But we ended up finding our Patrick, who is Lance's lawyer, after a series of, we saw headshots, we got auditions, self-tapes, and then we brought him back for a read through. And his chemistry with the crew or with the cast was just phenomenal. He is a funny guy. He has great timing. And he's really dedicated to the craft. Like I got to see him on set, sort of like in his head, in his process, and he brought a lot to the role. So, coming into a crew that is full of people who already know each other, some of them having known each other for years, that's hard. Yeah. And he came in and just meshed perfectly. So he has leading man material. Like anybody who sees this film knows that like he's ready.
He's ready. Well, amazing. And for the crew side of it, did you use Smoke Mountain Grip and Lighting? I knew them from way back in the day. How are they doing these days? How did you get them to come out?
To be honest, I did not know them beforehand, and they were brought in. Carl Coates was the person with Smoky Mountain Grip and Lighting, and he brought in Ryan Lacey, who I hadn't worked with before, who's just a really hard worker. And they were great. They were super good to have on set. They brought a ton of gear. They had all the things that we needed. We brought out a mini jib because we wanted that, big shot that feels like a rom-com. And they were brought in by our DP, who I met through Kurt Willis, because I don't know if anybody realizes this, but like 29 other teams were making short films at the same time.
Right.
So, people who I already knew were literally working that weekend. They were like, sorry, I've already shot 3 short films and I'm busy. Or I literally cannot take any more work on, like I'm completely slammed with all these films. So we worked with Matthew Rogers, who is a Knoxville native. He moved away. And I don't know if I'm like not supposed to say it, but I do believe he's moving back. So we'll be getting Matthew Rogers back in the community. He was wonderful to work with. It's so refreshing to have a DP that brings an almost like childlike wonder to the craft. It was definitely a much more gear intensive shoot than I had ever worked on as, both an executive producer and then in my previous work as a director. So it was really exciting to be supported by people who had a lot of experience. This is not to detract from any of their skills, but we built a lot of our crew based on who was available.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that to me ended up making the project better because I got to meet a lot of new people. Like our first AC, Garrett, I hadn't worked with him before, Garrett Henderson Black. He was fabulous. I felt like we were in really good hands with the crew that we had built.
So now that the film is completed, it's screened, did I hear something about how Sweetwater is going to be celebrating some sort of a 150-year celebration, and this film is going to be kind of a part of that celebration?
Oh, yeah. So the Sweetwater campaign for what we're doing with this film directly dovetails with what they're doing for their 150th anniversary, which is telling Sweetwater stories. So, telling their story as a city and the stories that happen within it. And How to Get the Girl has very much become part of that story. It's something that brought a lot of Main Street together. I mean, we had 7 locations. We had, I think, almost 15 extras who are part of the community. We had almost 20 contributors to the fundraising campaign. We had the support of the city. We had the support of the police force and the mayor's office. So it very much became a community effort. So what we're doing with this film is we're sort of leveraging it across multiple channels. So up front, we are going to do a Sweetwater screening in January for the community who supported the film, the community who made the film. We're going to have a red carpet. We're going to do pictures, and we're hosting it at the historic Athens Palace Theater.
That's so cool.
So that will be very fun. The film will be touring film festivals. We're already applying to some. We're really targeting places that are within a day trip distance to Sweetwater. Because kind of like what you're saying is, I saw the film and I want to go to that coffee shop. That's really what we want to inspire people to do. So the first official campaign it's a rom-com campaign. It's going to run through Valentine's Day, and it is falling in love with Sweetwater. So we are creating a travel guide that will go on the Sweetwater website that highlights all of the locations in the rom-com, so you can plan your own romantic day on Sweetwater's historic Main Street.
Well, you had mentioned that this was the second film that you had made this past year. Let's talk a little bit about the first one.
My first film that I made, and I got to make it this year, is called Lavender Fields Forever. It is a proof of concept for a feature that the script is in development. I have a treatment. I have a preliminary pitch deck. I have some preliminary dream casting. And, you talked earlier about how as filmmakers, we want to, show that deep soul in our project.
Of course.
And while my soul may not be dark and scary, like some of my peers,
Right.
My soul is very romantic escapism. Under the Tuscan Sun is a big inspiration for this film. But so the subject matter is about a woman who feels stuck in her life, and she gets this unexpected inheritance, and it really throws her life a curveball. So she ends up following a different path and exploring that. And it's based on an actual experience in my life when I was working for the Home Shopping Network in Clearwater. I was on like a 4 a.m. hair and makeup modeling shoot, and the man who owned the makeup company is an Italian man. He was sort of going on about how he owns this lavender farm in Italy, and it's like becoming dilapidated because there's no one to care for it. Like, that is so cool. At that time, I was in the process of trying to buy my first house. I was really into like real estate investing, which I think was just popular at the time. People were like, reading books about it. And I was, like 19, trying to figure out, how I was going to buy a house and not rent forever. And he was like, well, would you want to lease the lavender farm and take care of it? And then you could run the business and make money with it.
Wow. That's a huge opportunity.
Huge. And very like the kind of thing where like that twinkly music happens in the back of your head. Like, is this the magic I've been waiting for? And ultimately I didn't do it because I had just gotten into a relationship. I had a very big dog, which is very hard to move. I had a 90-pound greyhound at the time, which would have been difficult to move. And I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was a kid. The idea of moving to another country, a language I didn't know, to like take care of a house and a business. I was like, this is a nice fantasy, but the idea of actually doing this seems logistically maniacal. Mm-hmm. And I've always wondered, what would it have been like if I said yes? And this film, this story, Lydia's story, is very much an exploration of what it had been like if I had said yes.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool that you're able to take that from your own life. And so where's the film now? Is there any place that we can see it, or is it going to film festivals? What are your plans for it?
The film is going to film festivals. I'm trying to go the, keep it secret till it has its big premiere route. We got to work with a really stellar team. We had Curran Sheldon as our director of photography, and he brings just this element of, I want to say excellence, but he would probably roll his eyes at that because he's the one who really inspired me to have childlike wonder on set. He was the one who at 11:17 p.m. when we were 3 hours over time, he was like, no, let's do one more. I think we can get it. Just one more. And I was like, wow, man, thanks. And, we had a superb colorist whose name I will not mention because I know he doesn't want any more work. But we had these elements that came together. We had an original soundtrack that was created for us by local musician Travis Tench. You can listen to that on Spotify. There are just these elements to the film that are public. So, I'm looking forward to dropping the trailer. But I'm sharing a lot of stills. I'm sharing a lot of the experience of creating a proof of concept, sharing the soundtrack. But also, I really wanted this film to be not just a proof of concept for its feature, but for something of an ideology that I've been developing through AB Studios, which is about packaging your films. So as a producer and as a very new producer, I've come into the industry with a lot of curiosity of just like, how does it work? How do movies get made? movies are getting made in a lot of ways. You know, you have movies that are lower budget getting made for 300, 400,000, and companies are cranking them out like 6 or 7 a year. And they're pipeline straight to Hallmark, pipeline straight to Lifetime, pipeline straight to international, international pre-sales. What is the consistent through line? How are all of these people along what I'm calling the story to cinema pipeline communicating? All of these people from early stage investors and casting directors and line producers who are at the very beginning of a vision to, going into conversations with sales agents and going into conversations with, distributors. What does everybody need along that pathway in order to see the value in a story? So I wanted to create a proof of concept, not just for the feature film, but to experiment with how do I showcase what the people in my Knoxville filmmaking community are capable of? How do I showcase, whether or not it's going to work to package a film without having, my own deep portfolio of filmmaking? Can I, as a young filmmaker, get to the point of making a feature film if I'm able to give each of these stakeholders along this story to cinema pipeline exactly what they need through whether it's a pitch deck or a budget or the script or a lookbook, casting? There's so many elements that go into it. And so I wanted to have a platform to go through the process and see what it takes to go from start to finish. I'm a new filmmaker and I want to make a feature film.
And that seems like just a great way to do it. And you have to come back with your findings and give us advice and let us know what works and what doesn't and all that good stuff. So,
of course.
Well, that is so cool. Let's talk about your website. So your website, I went to it today and it's great. You have a blog where you can really kind of keep up with what you're doing. You can tell that you're a legit writer. So tell me, why is it important to you to communicate in this way?
So there's a bit of a selfishness to it in the sense that I like to process what I'm going through by writing, and it helps me to make sense of how, there's a lot of things going on, and I like to come back to the page. I like to come back to conceptualizing in writing because it allows me to synthesize thoughts and make connections and notice patterns and ultimately learn lessons. I think I learn through processing. And so some of the things that I've written about on the blog, like the story to cinema pipeline and, crowdfunding versus investing, these are things that I'm learning in the journey of becoming a producer, that I'm synthesizing information from my life as an entrepreneur. And I feel this sense of, am I a real artist sometimes? Because so much of what I do ends up taking the business perspective and taking, being a producer is ultimately being a business person. And so putting those lessons out there and putting my own experience out there, there's this accountability of I said I wanted to do this. I said I wanted to learn. And now I want to share that with other people because a lot of that information is not out there online to learn. And usually you can only learn that through mentorship. I find either mentorship or experience. And mentors are hard to come by. People are really busy. And I don't think we really teach young people or individuals, it's not how to ask for help. It's sort of how do I learn from you? How do I, kind of ingratiate myself into your process so that I can, see firsthand what it's like to do what you do. And I've been fortunate enough to have those people in my life. And I want to share that experience with other people because the conversations that come out of it are often even more valuable than the, original article. Yeah. So putting that information into something like a blog post, or for me, they usually start as a Substack, which is just me sending out an email blast to 200 people I know. I get to have follow-on conversations with people who want to ask questions about it or critique it or share their own insights into it. And that kind of conversation creates transparency in an industry that is gate-kept and thoroughly difficult to understand if you're not involved at the studio level. It's not like a how to make movies for dummies kind of thing. You are confronted with brand new questions and brand new thoughts so often that the choices that you make matter on the trajectory of your journey.
Thank you for doing that. That's amazing. And as far as wondering if you're a real artist because you kind of approach it from a business perspective, movies are business. Like you need people to see them. You need to make money from them. Otherwise, you're just doing what I'm doing for fun, you know?
I mean, the thing about movies being business, I'm really glad you said that because it's hard. I think artists tend to look at business as being icky, and I am an anti-capitalist. Like I'm an anti-capitalist entrepreneur. I also think that business can be very icky, but business also creates opportunity in the system in which we have to live in. Like we all exist in this capitalist economy. And so if I have the opportunity to create jobs, if I have the opportunity to take money from an interested investor or an interested sponsor and parlay that into profession for fellow artists, that to me feels like, at least for me, that to me is the highest integration between art and business, because I'm getting to employ people who have professionally honed their craft at living wages to do something that they love. I mean, a movie is literally a startup that you run for 2 or 3 years and then you close it. I mean, like Wicked ran its startup for quite a few years in order to make that massive enterprise. But most movies are a producer or a handful of producers starting a massive business in which they hire people who work in pre-production. They hire people who work on set. They hire people who work in post, and then they pay for marketing. They do all of the business things. It's just not a business that has to infinitely expand and, keep growing and become an institution. It's something that ideally finds its place in the market and allows the rest of that team to move on and create something new.
I see. Well, cool. Yeah. Well, let's have some fun for a minute.
Okay.
Let's talk about movies.
Yes.
So let's talk about maybe your top 5 favorite romantic comedies.
Okay. So I will say, as much as I love rom-coms, I have a couple favorite movies that I want to throw in there that aren't rom-coms. But my top favorite movie, which I guess I would consider a rom-com, it's got a sci-fi element to it, is called I'm a Cyborg, but That's Okay.
Interesting. I haven't seen this.
It's a Park Chan-wook film.
Oh, I love him.
But like not one of his dark films. It's really sweet. It's about a girl who develops a sort of mania, and it results in her being institutionalized. And then this sort of friend family group that she meets inside of this institution who all experience different, mental experiences, and the romance that sort of helps heal her heart.
I see.
It's real. I get chills just thinking about it. It's such a sweet film. It's in Korean, but I find that if a movie can transcend language and you can be reading the subtitles and still laughing and crying, like the movie has more than done its job.
Absolutely.
But I think my favorite rom-com of all time is Serendipity.
Ooh,
with
John Cusack, right?
John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale, and Molly Shannon is in there.
Ah.
To me, it's the perfect film to capture the magic of everyday life and the magic of love without it being like magical realism.
I see.
It's truly about coincidences. It's about, serendipity and how different perspectives view the validity of that as like a means of living your life.
I see.
It's real sweet.
So, okay, so that's your favorite rom-com. Mm-hmm. Do you like teen movies?
Teen movies.
Like Mean Girls or...
I enjoy those films. Like I feel like Mean Girls, Legally Blonde are some really just like iconic genre pictures.
Yeah.
I think as an actor, I find myself drawn to movies that have really incredible acting. So I would say one of my favorite films of all time is Girl Interrupted.
I love that. Yeah.
Just so many incredible performances by diverse women, and in an environment, adapted from a true account, and in an environment that is both exceptional and very realistic. I think for women who have, grown up and experienced what it's like to have your brain on fire a little bit.
Yes.
Other favorite movies. I literally just I just picked my top 4 on Letterboxd. And I almost want to pull up my phone to be like, what did I put on that top 4 for Letterboxd, because I don't know, I don't know if anybody experiences this. Somebody's like, what's your favorite movie? And I'm like, I've never seen a movie in my entire life.
I'm the exact same way. I'm just right now, I'm excited to have someone who likes romantic comedies and stuff like that to talk to, because I love that. And a lot of my friends don't. I love costume dramas, like period pieces, like Sense and Sensibility or The Duchess or, whatever. I love all those movies.
But I really enjoyed Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. That is a comfort movie for me because there's almost nothing happening. I just turn the volume down at the end when it gets really loud and it's very violent. But a movie like that is just like fun CGI, and like Eddie Redmayne is a gem on this earth to just experience as an actor. I know that that's probably not like a super, that doesn't paint me as a great film goer if I love a Harry Potter movie, but that is one of my comfort movies. It's sweet. It shows friendship. There's magic, there's good CGI, and it just like, it has this, I love that period in history, the aesthetic of the 1920s, the Belle Epoque, like that came before it. Like, I just love, as you said, period dramas. I love diving into another era. So then tell me if this is a romantic comedy.
Okay.
Midnight in Paris.
I love Midnight in Paris, and I think it's 100% a romantic comedy. 100%.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's probably Woody Allen's best film because he's not in it. But I consider movies like that. That's another one of those like magical realism elements that blends. You have costume, you have location, you have also just like two people who probably shouldn't be in a relationship together and what that means for the character at the end.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, let me see what else was on my profile here. Oh, okay. Is this a romantic comedy?
Okay.
My Cousin Vinny.
I've never seen My Cousin Vinny. It is a classic movie that everyone has seen except me.
As an Italian, I assign you homework that you have to watch My Cousin Vinny.
I will absolutely do it.
It was honestly one of my first exposures in cinema to small town. Because, I mean, it takes place in a small town in Alabama, and they do, in a way, caricaturize it. And that's something that I now, as a filmmaker, stand against. I'm very much someone who says I want to make movies in real places with real people and not caricaturize cultures or reduce them to a two-dimensional, accent and, sensibility. But My Cousin Vinny is so funny, and it challenges gender roles. It challenges our ideas of small town community. And it's just, the comedic timing is so incredible. Yeah. You'll have to watch it and tell me if you think it's a romantic comedy, because the main relationship between the two people is so, I feel like it's quintessential rom-com because it's a little bit toxic. They're like a little bit mean to each other, but in a way of like almost sibling-like mean to each other. Yes. They're so close. They know each other so well. And I love to see that kind of relationship play out.
You have my word. I will watch this movie and I will report back.
Yes. Okay, good. I want to add one more movie. I saw this movie at Film Fest Knox. And I want to put it on the record that this is one of my favorite romantic comedies, even though there is no actual like kissing, loving romance in it. Bob Trevino Likes It.
Oh.
Did you get to see it?
I did not get to see it, but that was the one that I wanted to see probably the most of all.
I got to talk to the director, Tracy, who is a very special, on her way to a very, broad-reaching and relevant career. She is a tremendous filmmaker. And this film is literally about a girl whose dad sucks. Yeah. And she ultimately finds a father figure in a stranger with the same name as her father. And the friendship between them is the kind of relationship I dream to get to, like, explore as a director in film, because the movie is funny. You have the main character, she has her friend that she works with. She has this older male figure who is like a father figure to her. The main character is so emotive and so emotionally resonant, but like the film leaves you just cleansed at the end, full of love. Your heart has swelled to 5 times its usual size, because even in the saddest moments of the movie, there is so much hope for the goodness of people and the goodness of being in relationship with people. So like, even though it's a brand new movie and like it's a movie I've only seen once, I would consider Bob Trevino Likes It one of my favorite movies. I don't know. I mean, I really like movies that have meaningful messaging. When I was 10, my goal was to make movies that entertained people, but also taught them something. Yes. You know, maybe expose them to something they didn't know before, or introduce them to people or ideas that they didn't know before. And when I was explaining that to him, he just simplified it. He was like, so you want hearts and smarts? And I was like, can I have that? He's like, it's stupid. I was like, it's mine. Hearts and smarts.
If you stay on the path that you're on, I have nothing but 100% confidence that you will be able to achieve those goals. And I cannot wait to keep up with your story and your blog and your website. And we have to have you back on when you have more news to share. But I thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I had a great time.
Well, there we have it, folks. Amelia Bartlett. That was so cool, right? Man, I really enjoyed my time with Amelia. If you'd like to know more about her and the projects that she's working on, you can go to abstudios.com. So that's ab-studios.com. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that it was inspiring to you, and that you get some ideas and some inspiration for the projects that you are working on also. Well, that's it for me. I'm wishing you all the best in 2025, and let's make it the best year yet.